What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. I'm your host, Reckless Rex Ruger. That, if you couldn't tell by those large gangly teeth, is my co-host, the Freddie Mercury puppet. We got another great guest. He's here now. I'm not going to leave him waiting. We're going to get down to it and chop it up. I'm excited. I've been giddy all day about this one. Let's go. I cannot believe it. We're going to get him in here. We're going to make it happen here. Where is he? Where is he? Do we got you, Jim? Just got to enable the camera and the microphone down there at the bottom of your screen there. There should be like some buttons down there that look like a microphone and a camera.
You have my audio?
I got your audio, yep.
Allow Gmail to access your camera so you can make... Okay, I got to go in.
Yeah, there's usually a button right down there that kind of looks like a camera icon down at the bottom of your screen, like a row of buttons down there. You see it? There he is. I got you.
All right. Now you just
I've got you in there twice, I think, but I'll kick one of you out.
Right. Kick the right one out.
Yeah, I'm going to kick the right one out and keep the right one in. Jim, this is a real honor to have you on here, man. I was just saying in my little preamble beforehand that I found myself throughout the day at work giddy, and I don't use that word very much, giddy about today's episode. I was excited.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, I was giddy. I mean, I don't know. I have musicians on here all the time, man, but very rarely do I have somebody who has the distinct honor of being on the 8th. One of my sources said 9th, but the 8th best-selling U.S. album of all time. That's a crazy accomplishment.
That's a bizarre anecdote. Not even anecdote. It's a bizarre statistic for me because, I mean, you're all people who are writing songs when they're young and in a band and trying to increase their audience and, get in front of some people who want to hear music. We never, put a number on it or
Right.
I think anybody would be lying if they were out there playing gigs and they didn't want to increase their audiences. But we weren't. That wasn't our obsession. Our obsession was just growing it a little bit at a time. So the fact that it went that high and that album got to where it did and remains there is nothing short of bizarre for me.
Yeah. So usually I kind of start at the beginning, and I got so much stuff I want to talk to you about. We'll get to the book and your amazing story. But for you, when you got into this music thing, was there a specific album or an artist or a song that really lit the fire for you early on in the beginning and that served as an influence for you?
No, it was probably instead of being one, it was having a variety of sounds and a variety of genres. I've always been tried to be open to different genres of music, and it was because when I first started hearing music, I didn't have control over there were no ears or I didn't have a record collection when I was young. You listened to either what was on a radio or what your older siblings were listening to or what your parents might listen to, and eventually your friends and you would get, for my age group, a record player or something like that. But it was because there was a lot of stuff coming at me, and I enjoyed the liberation of like hearing new wave or classic rock, not so much country when I was young and not so much jazz or blues, but different varieties of rock and roll certainly, and even pop music at the time in the early 70s, late 60s. I was into all that. So to say that there was one artist or one main thing, not so much. But when I picked up drumsticks and wanted to start practicing and learning the craft, there were mainly rock bands that were the guys that I could play along with were the guys that I liked the most. So that, it was a very small window, but really some simple drummers like Don Henley or, from the Eagles. He wasn't complicated. The music of Creedence Clearwater Revival was drumming I could do, that's what you need at first. Certainly I loved the crazier drummers, Keith Moon and John Bonham. I love Stan Lynch from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, the Styx drummer. There's tons of guys that I love, but who influenced me? Probably the ones that I could actually drum to.
Yeah, and I equate you guys, you know, as a band as such amazing songwriters. I mean, you know, the songs have great hooks. They're anthemic. Yeah, I mean, we love to sing along with them, man. They certainly stick in your head, and they've certainly held up, you know, over time. You know, just timeless classics. What was the creative process like for you and the other guys in Hootie? Did somebody kind of have the lion's share of the ideas? What happened when you guys got together? Was it very collaborative? What was it like early on when you guys were creating music together?
Well, because we didn't have a formal teacher or guide, and we weren't, you know, formally trained, we were left to make it up on our own. And we all had a desire to replicate bands that we loved growing up, whether it was Motown, R&B, or Southern rock, or classic rock, or hard rock. We all listened to that variety of music, so we were just trying to make something that was somewhere, you know, in that realm of respectability. But you know, Mark, our guitarist Mark Bryan, was always really, I called, prolific. He put out a large quantity of fun and interesting melodies on his guitar, and so the fact that he put out a lot meant you could take the best stuff and you'd never be short of musical ideas. So that was great with Mark. I was more of a novice at guitar and piano, but I was certainly putting out enough that was something for Darius to latch onto, and for us as a band to say, yeah, we can run with that idea. I could pull together an entire arrangement of a song and get that formulated and bring it to the band, and then we could make it our own later. Dean at the early days was making less music, but he was super important on arranging and having an opinion about what we wanted to sound like. And Darius too was like me, a novice guitarist, bringing in ideas, bringing in lyrics, but he was real open in the earlier years to singing our lyrics too. And he went, sometimes he wanted them, sometimes he didn't. And that's what you sort of dealt with. You all have to give and you all take in that process. And, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong about it. I think a lot of rock bands did it just that way.
Sure. Yeah. Just kind of found their own formula. Yeah.
Right. You know some chords. Okay. Well, this REM song, here's, you know, how it goes. Let's do something that's, you know, sounds a little bit like that. You do a verse, you do a chorus, you do a bridge maybe. I mean, it wasn't hard to come up with a of what it was supposed to sound like. But that's the brilliance of just the four of us in a room for many years, is that no one was telling us what to do. No one said you need to do this or sound like this, or why don't you try this? This is popular. No one ever did that for us. And so by the time we got to recording Cracked Rear View, which came out in the summer of '94, we'd been writing for 5 or 6 years and had a good idea of who we were and what we wanted to sound like. So there wasn't a big influence of other music in that sense.
And now the four of you guys meet at college. I've seen in other interviews that sports and soccer. Well, let me backtrack. When you were at college, you specifically, what was the game plan? Obviously, you were there, you know, pursuing an education in what would have been the plan had music not worked out?
For me, something in the arts, still a creative endeavor. I was studying in the pre-digital era. This is the '80s. Black and white photography, video production, audio production, some script writing, and things like that. I was definitely going to be in that field, whether it was commercial TV or making films. I would have loved to go that way. Mark Bryan was in a similar field. He was in journalism, so he was a little bit understanding of editing and visuals and lighting and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, my plan when I came to Columbia, South Carolina, was soccer. I was 18 years old. I wanted to play Division I, and that's the only thing I had on my mind. It definitely was not school until probably 3 or 4 years in. I found this program that suited my arts needs, and I had a job when we were, you know, forming. When I joined in '89, for the first 2 or 3 years, we all kept day jobs, and my day job was working at the university production facility, making videos, or, you know, being part of a crew that was making commercials, watching how it all worked. And so I would have probably been happy enough getting into that. I would have landed in music for certain, but it might have just been a hobby.
And so for people that don't know, the four of you guys are all going to the University of South Carolina. For people that don't know the backstory, how does it all start? You guys meet on campus? What do you guys just say? Let's hey, you play an instrument, I play an instrument, let's jam a little bit together. How does it go from, take me through the steps of how it goes from that to Cracked Rear View?
Yeah, it's Mark Bryan here and Darius Rucker in the dormitory singing in the shower. And Mark's brought a guitar to college and he wants to make music or be in a band. He says, Darius, you want to jam? Come over to my room. They start playing. They hit it off. They were playing mostly cover songs, and they finally get a gig at a little local bar. They were called the Wolf Brothers at the time. And it was just two guys making music for free beer and chicken wings probably. And they finally realized they liked that and wanted to do more. They begged Dean Felber, our bass player, who had grown up with Mark, in to play bass. He was not thrilled with the prospect. I think he said no a few times. He just didn't want to do that. And they finally said, just do it for now. We'll do a few gigs and see how it goes. They got a drummer named Brantley Smith, who was also a University of South Carolina student. And they started doing with what I'd done in a different band around the same time. You play covers, you play parties, you have a good time, you meet chicks, you drink beer. It's fun. And eventually, and those three were getting the same bug in 1989 to write our own music. We felt like we wanted to say something, not just play cover songs. And that's when Brantley left HOOTIE and the Blowfish. I auditioned and joined the band, and we started writing and really focusing on how do we get into the music business, because we were definitely not in the music business at that time. We were a bar band out of campus. We were small, and how do we get ourselves on the radio? How do you get recorded? How do you do any of that stuff? We were very naive.
And so what do you guys do? Do you put something down like a recording? Does somebody come and see you guys and notice you guys at a gig?
We keep playing these parties where you're playing a lot of cover songs.
Right.
You're playing 3-hour-long sets at least. But we start putting our original songs into the sets, and they seem to be fitting in pretty well. People aren't running for the doors or the bathroom.
Right. It's always good.
Right, yeah. We had some good signs, but we started using those money from parties to fund studio time to record that solo music, because in 1989, 1990, you couldn't open up your laptop and use Pro Tools and do all that. You had to go to a legit studio with a producer, and you had to pay kind of a substantial amount of money to get decent recording. So we made a 5-song cassette in 1990 that we sold at shows, all originals. We did it again in 91. We're trying to send them out to publishers, and we're trying to send it out to radio stations and record companies. Sign us, somebody listened to us, and it was mostly rejections for the most part. And we just kept going. We were having fun. Our crowd was increasing. We were starting to travel out of South Carolina into Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida. And 93 came along. We made our first CD, which was like a new format at the time. And we thought it was the best 5 songs we'd done. And Atlantic Records noticed it. And they said, well, these guys got a good following in the Southeast. They travel, they got management, they sell T-shirts. We think we can do something with that. So that was when they funded what became Cracked Rear View. We recorded in Los Angeles. We were thrilled to be, oh my God, in LA, making an album for Atlantic, who had, broke Zeppelin, Aretha Franklin, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. They were the biggest.
Yeah.
So we were just like a pinch me moment, but no guarantee. Honestly, we'd seen bands get signed and go to big towns and make albums, and then they go. Radio didn't like the single, or the record company didn't make them a priority. We were not overly confident that this was going to be a big break. We just knew someone was funding a nice recording, and maybe we'd get lucky and they'd want to play one of the songs that we knew was popular for our audience, which ended up being the songs that were singles on Cracked Rear View. We tested Hold My Hand for 4 or 5 years. We tested Only Want to Be With You for 3 or 4 years. Let Her Cry, Time. These were songs we played in bars, and the people told us just by their actions, these are good songs.
These are winners. Yeah.
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 And so we put those on that album and put them out as singles. And well, David Letterman sort of started it all off by inviting us on to his show, and that put us in front of 5 million viewers for 3
Yeah.
hours,
That
3 minutes
helped.
and 20 seconds. Not a
Yeah.
bad promo.
Yeah, that's a nice little boost. And contrary to popular belief, and I believe you guys have cleared this up in past interviews, but contrary to popular belief, Darius is not Hootie. You guys are not the Blowfish. You know what I mean? Like that was just like what? Like an inside college joke?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's one of those band names, which I think at the time, Gary suggested it, and I don't know if Mark or Dean liked it, but he said, let's just use it for now. It's kind of catchy. We
Yeah.
don't have anything else. And
Working
as the
name.
years, yeah, right. As the years go by, you get a following, and people kind of, it was memorable. That's all it was. It was dumb as hell, but people couldn't forget it. And in the end, what do you want them to do? Think it's a cool name or think it's a memorable name?
Right. And I'm curious because I want to dive into the book, Swimming with the Blowfish. First of all, before we get into what's in the book, who comes to you with the idea to write a book? Are you approached by a publishing company? Is this your idea?
No one in the freaking world needed me to write a book.
Well,
But
listen.
I did.
Listen. Let me add on to that, though, man. That I do believe, man, the books usually become a book and manifest themselves because somebody out there really does need it, though, and really needs to hear the story.
I mean, I felt like, my life had taken some big twists and turns, and I started thinking of the whole story as I learned more about myself and as life started going by and raising kids, and the band had taken a long dormancy, and it wasn't even evident that we are going to get back and tour again. I started thinking, I want to say some things about this journey. I think it's a cool story where how I discover who I am and get to South Carolina, meet 3 other guys who, if a few different things would have happened, I never would have met the other
Right.
guys in the band. I was in other bands and on a different trajectory, but, ended up, I wanted to tell the unlikely story of us getting as big as we did, how we all set out with certain expectations and goals, but it was bigger than we'd ever thought. And then the real story of what happens in the business. Sometimes you get left or forgotten or whatever. And we'd sort of had a big downward trajectory, which also included me acknowledging that I can't drink like a normal human being and having
Yeah.
to seek help for that addiction. And through the twists and then more to come even after that, it took about 10 years of life settling down for me to get the idea that there was a story there. And I think we all have a story. It's not to say that anybody doesn't have a great story, but I looked at mine and I thought, I've got a cool arc here, like a movie arc that has a nice sort of, I don't know, it pulls you along. There's conflict. You want somebody to win. You go through difficulties. It's got all the things like that. So I just felt I'm going to start it and see what happens. And it honestly took me about 4 years to get this thing done because it was just me and my laptop, and my wife Laura was significant in shaping the book at the beginning too, because she had lived a lot of the same period and was down here in South Carolina. Yes, she happened to have been married to our guitarist previously, so that allowed her to see inside the band like no one else had. And so that story, and then the fact that we get to wrap it all up with a great 2019 tour, which was bigger than we'd ever expected it could be. I was writing the book during that sort of reunion, and then COVID hits, and I have to finish the book. But it's yeah. To that answer your question, no one needed it, but I'm so glad that I decided it was a story worth telling.
And did you find that writing the book, was it all cathartic for you, or did you find find going back in time to be painful? Was it a combination of both?
I had already had a lot of catharsis having to get sober. And so part of my journey in sobriety was I needed somebody else's help. I couldn't have fought my way out of a paper bag at all. I didn't know which way to turn. I was heavy in addiction. And the fact that I decided I got brought to this group of people who were practicing this 12-step model, which seemed to really not only solve for my addiction problem, but leave me very enlightened. So I had a lot of catharsis through those 12 steps, which means you go through and it's a fact-facing mission.
Oh,
You
yeah.
look at all the years past, you look at the people you've hurt, you've looked at your regrets, your disappointments, your failures, and you start to resolve for them. And then you come out the other end feeling a little a little human, and like you can
Yeah.
deal with life, and you're highly educated about what makes you tick. So I'd already had 10 years of that, and that allowed me to really face some things like the death of my mother, the questions about our band. Were we together? Where were our fans? Divorce, death, all the things that we all deal with, like for a large part in our lives. But I'd had a lot of that, and that's what dared me to pick up sort of, the idea of I'm going to write about it. If I didn't have a clue of who I was, or any of the questions about the band resolved, I probably wouldn't have written a book about it. There would have been no real ending. It would have been just sort of a gray, blurry,
Yeah.
what happened to them?
Yeah. Well, I did see in past interviews, in preparing for my conversation with you, I did see you talk about what we all go through typically in when we're younger, experimenting. I mean, I think every teenager has has experienced dealing with alcohol and drugs to some extent. But the band, Cracked Rear View, comes out in '94. But a lot of what you focus on in the book is really like starting around the early 2000s. I mean, how far into the career did the addiction start? Had it always been kind of going along, or did it just kind of swell at a certain point in the band's career?
Yeah, I mean, it had been going along, but I was dealing with it. I never measured it as like, ooh, do I have a problem? I wasn't in jail, so I didn't think I was the worst guy. I didn't, I wasn't always in fights. I had enough good times that I thought it wasn't a problem. But it was when the band's trajectory started coming down around 2000, when we put out 3 albums. It was obvious that the crowds were shrinking back up again. We were at odds with our record label. We didn't really have a representative there. We split with our manager. My bandmates started moving a couple hours away to the coast, and I had started a family, got married, and then I started having kids, and this was like a big stressor on me that I was sort of unaware was as big as it was. So I started using the thing that had always worked for me to feel better or celebrate. That's what we do, right? We lift up a glass. And so I continued to use that, not really seeing that it was becoming, I guess, moving from recreational to habitual to medicinal to fully alcoholic. And by the time I'm drinking like an alcoholic, I'm also, like a lot of us do, fully denying it, fully saying, screw you, I can handle this, and get off my back. So it's like you're trying to fight something you can't even understand or control. So yeah, the early 2000s is when some things are changing in our career and in my life, and I don't know what to do with it. So I just use, we're in pain, right? People when we're in pain, we reach for something. Some people have shrinks. Some people do counseling. Some people just work it out.
And you find yourself as a musician, because it is, the hedonism and all that kind of stuff, you read about it when you read rock biographies all the time. Do you almost normalize it and almost kind of say during your career, like, it's kind of part of the rock and roll journey too?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've sort of looked at myself as maybe I'll be one of these crazy guys who goes out on the edge with chemicals, and it inspires him, and he writes some cool as hell stuff. And I'm Jim Morrison.
I'm going to write the next Stairway to Heaven.
Right. I mean, and as I got deeper into it, that's what I kept telling myself. And it's unrealistic, especially given that my other trajectory that I'd chosen was trying to be married, and we started having kids. That doesn't match up. It's like ridiculous to think that you can do them all. But then again, hey, I'm a rock star. Don't I get to do whatever I want in this part of my journey? Like you said, you start to live into that, but they're at odds. They're eventually going to either explode, crumble, or burn, and that's what was about to happen with me. I had some interventions, people around you that love you. It's not good when people start cornering you and starting out by saying, we really care for you and we really love you. Oh shit, this is not going the way I want it to.
It seems like that never segues into anything good. and at the time that it's happening, is it kind of like a combination of a lot of things, or was there one specific ultimate like low point? I mean, like, was there any one like profound incident that was really like the final straw?
You know, getting desperate, I guess. And so I had these interventions. My bandmates were great. They loved me. They were scared for me. They had all the anxiety of having a band member. You're not sure where he is and what he's doing. And he's had some physical problems as a result of chemicals he's putting in his body. So they're worried sick. And so is my family. And they're all probably mad too. Like, dude, get your shit together. You know, it's a variety. Sure. And so I'd had these going on for a couple years. And all I could do was try and drink my way through them and try, and it ends up, you end up having to hide things and lie more, and then you can't even keep track of the truth half the time. So I was in that position and had a good intervention. About my mom ends up dying in 2004 in the summer, and that hurts, but I'm unprepared. I'm trying to numb myself from that. And in about October, I get an intervention, which is somebody coming at me saying something different, which was not, you're an idiot, you're screwing up, you're throwing your life away, what are you doing? I already knew I was doing that. Right. This person sort of started saying, hey, do you value yourself? Do you love yourself enough to maybe start doing something for yourself instead of what you are doing? And I'd never been asked that. And it was a profound question to me, like, yeah, I do love myself. I mean, I also hate myself because of what I've been doing, but yeah. And I had to think about that. And I had 2 kids at this time. It was really, I just lost my mom. It was not going well. Things were not looking up, but I sort of stayed on that for about a month or a month and a half. And the final thing, so yeah, you asked, was there a final straw? It happened to be my 4-year-old daughter accidentally or providentially coming to me, and I was on another bender, stayed up very late. I was in my music studio, which was detached from our home, and she shows up at 10:30 in the morning. I'm passed out on a couch, and I'm desperate enough to sort of listen to her, I guess. And she just says, Dad, what are you doing? She hops up on my chest. What are you doing? And I'm like, can't say anything. Usually I could make up something. And what she meant was, in a very also profound but simple way, what are you doing out in the music studio at 10:30 in the morning wearing the clothes you had on last night when you were reading my story? Mom and my brother in the family room in there eating pancakes and watching Mickey Mouse and having a blast. What are you out here passed out for? She really just wanted to know what the heck I was doing there. And she ran off, and I was left just with that silence. And it was loud enough for me to go, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to admit it right now to whatever God is and whoever I am, to say, I can't do it. I do need help. And that was the moment. For whatever reason, that was like the sort of moment that I said, I'm going to ask for help. And I was 40 and I was successful. I didn't really want to need somebody. I didn't want to need someone's help, let alone with my drinking. But I was desperate. I was in pain and I didn't like who I was becoming. And so I called a dude, and he brought me where he had been going to hang out with people who had a solution for my problem.
So you did have to have the, so you did have to go to an inpatient facility, though. That's what that's ultimately what helped. Because there are people who try to lick it on their own. You know what I mean? They try to do the outpatient thing, or they try to do it on their own, though. So you sought actual treatment then?
No, he told me, he said, I'm going to take you to this group. They meet regularly, and they practice this 12-step model. You don't have to give any money. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to identify yourself as anybody in particular. Just come and listen. Yeah. And that's what I needed. So this 12-step group, which was a bunch of drunks who were getting their lives back together, that first meeting was just hit me so hard, like, oh my God, I am just like those people. Yeah. And the only difference is I don't know how to stay sober for 24 freaking hours at a time, and they do. Right. And so I went back for that second meeting like, oh, hell yeah. I think they have the answer I've been, desperate for. So
and you make a good point, because you do see people, and again, going back to reading so many rock biographies, you do see people going in and out of it, and dropping thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in and out of rehabs. And it's not a surefire recipe for success.
I didn't want to, in some twisted thought process, I didn't want to upset here I have my whole band and my family after me to quit drinking. Yet I'm thinking, I don't want to upset them and go to rehab for 30 days or 90 days. I'll just keep going and I'll figure it out. I've got a group around me now that's going to show me the way. And that's what I did. And I went back out. I didn't last 90 days before I thought, ooh, I've got this thing lit. I'll do this my way, and screwed up and relapsed. But I went back because I knew they did have the answer, and everybody around me seemed to be pleased that the non-drinking Soni, the non-drinking Jim, was a better version than the drinking one. And I did kind of want to please them. I wanted their approval, but I couldn't deny that over time, my life was just getting better. It changes first. You got to change some old ideas. You got to figure out some of the regrets of your past. But over time, there was no doubt this was the right path for me. So, I mean, if anybody's out there that's struggling with that, there are answers. That's the whole problem, is that we think we can all do it. I got this.
Oh, sure.
But there's a lot of people that are just waiting for you to throw up the white flag of surrender and get in a group and sit there and listen for a little bit and go, they seem like they know what they're talking about.
And oddly enough, I've had a couple conversations, and it's cropped up in recent interviews where we've kind of, and I like to keep it free form conversation on here. When I have musical guests on here, obviously we talk about music, we talk about new projects, we talk about their current album or whatever. But the conversation has veered off in the last couple of weeks with different guests on here about mental health. And it is nice that those walls have come down and men can talk about that a little bit more. Did you find in your recovery that, like, once you scratched the surface and got to the base of the addiction, were there any mental health issues that you felt you had to deal with?
I mean, I honestly, when I gave up the drinking and the drugs and sat on that for a couple months, what I discovered is I'm freaking crazy. I mean, I don't throw it out there flippantly, but I'm fucking crazy as beans, man. I don't have a clue. Like, the principles that they were discussing and the idea of being really honest, not just cash register honest, but like honest about who you are and what you need, and then honest outwardly. And I didn't have a clue. I found, and that's why I had relapsed. I went back to, God, I'm miserable. I can't drink alcohol to feel better. I can't do drugs to escape. And I'm just stuck with my insane thoughts. Oh, dude. So, and that's sort of, I guess, most programs will give you that. They call it a spiritual sort of step work, where you're trying to use some old school principles to get honest, to admit something, to find out where you really are honestly, instead of trying to BS yourself and anybody else, and then really look at your path and your ideas and your attitudes and make some wholesale changes. So that's the path that I admit to. So mental health, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I never
it's not even about just laying like the label of crazy, but you're talking about like losing your mother, loss, grief. Obviously you were handed a huge plate of success early on. Sometimes that's hard to process and deal with. I mean, that stuff kind of sometimes manifests itself into mental illness, we think all that stuff is great. Like, wow, I'm selling, millions and millions of albums, but at the core of that though, that can really fuck you up.
If you don't get to express it or share it with someone who might have some solutions, then you're just stuck dealing with it yourself. And some people do have better tools than others, and it showed that I did not. I'd been drinking since I was 14, and I often used it as a little bit of an escape, and it always made me feel good, or made me feel like my life was going the right way. And it was a celebration. But when you I didn't have the tools. I didn't have any of the emotional tools once I got clean to go, how do I solve my problems? How do I have boundaries in my life? How do I have good, healthy relationships? I didn't know anything about that because I was filled with all the bad ways of doing it. So
and I've struggled off and on throughout my life too. And I think you make a good point too. I mean, we do justify it sometimes. I'm not a working musician or have any success in the music industry. I work a day job. I'm a nurse. I work in healthcare. But we do justify coming home and saying, hey, I work hard. I deserve to have some vices. And so we almost make it like, hey, this is normal. Like I'm allowed to cut loose a little.
And I think that's perfectly okay. That's it. And that's maybe the differential is that we use it for relief. Hell yeah. You work your ass off. You have suffering in life. It's hard being human sometimes.
Sure.
So we relieve ourselves with something we might smoke or something we might drink, whatever. But and if you can down normally, hell yeah. There's tons of normal people that have a glass of wine and
Sure.
that's all they have, and they toss the rest in the disposal. That was never me. I didn't
Right.
really want to just have one, and so people use it for relief through all ages. They've figured out to put it in a pipe or roll it up or
Yeah.
distill it. That's what we do, and that is, I think, perfectly fine, given if you can control it. But my problem was I couldn't. If I put one in my body, it would set off this craving. It was like I couldn't control the ending. I never
Yeah.
wanted to have one later on. Hell, if I look at the first night I drank, I didn't want to just have one. It
Right.
made me feel better and different.
Right.
So I
Right.
said, let's double down on that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
at the end of my first day, I was vomiting on the side yard of my house growing up at 14. So I was already didn't do it right from the get-go, but not every time I drank was it a catastrophe. And that's part of the sort of game that I would tell myself, I'm okay. I
Right.
didn't do a bad thing last night when I drank, so I must
Yeah.
not be an alcoholic. But it gets deeper as you get further into the game. For me, it was, 25 years of using in the end, and I feel lucky to have escaped it.
And then what about when Hootie and the Blowfish are really at the height of their success? Obviously, man, you guys are playing all over the place. I mean, you're selling millions of albums. You're writing these tremendous songs that are really resonating, all around the world. Were these problems at all rearing their ugly head at all during the heights of your success? Were they interfering with the Hootie and the Blowfish, machine, so to speak, at the time?
Nah, because we were caught up in a whirlwind and not many guardrails or guardians out there when you're a famous rock and roll band and you're idolized and you've got people around you to serve you and make you feel good. They're not going to sit there and judge what you're doing. So I never had any idea that things might have been going wrong. And we like to have fun together. We liked hanging out in bars. We liked meeting people and doing shots and all that stuff. It was a celebration.
Sure.
And for the most part, if you can handle that, again, yeah, you'll learn after a few hangovers not to drink as much, but
Right.
I never did. And eventually my tolerance got high, and I couldn't turn off the wanting to prove to everyone, aren't we having fun here? Isn't life great? Even when it went on paper, it was going down the other way. That even encouraged me more to say, it's going well, let's party, just in case it isn't.
Right.
And so
Right.
I was always the guy that was off nights. You work your ass off. You play 5 shows a week. We have an off night. Let's get the crew together, I would say. People are resting, normal people, and I'm like, let's go bowling and take over a bowling alley and get drunk and have fun and go to a bar, or let's go do this crazy thing. My off nights were becoming on nights, and then I'd go home where people might go home to their families to rest, air quotes for you listening.
Right.
I'm not resting. I'm home. Let's party.
Yeah.
It's so good to be home.
Yeah.
It ends up not looking right, and people saw it before I did, unfortunately.
And spirituality starts to become like a huge theme in the book. Were you always a spiritual person? Were you were you brought up that way, or was that something that you kind of turned to in order to help you get through the addiction? Did you always have a strong spiritual foundation?
I mean, it depends what angle you want to come in from. I look at spirituality as a general sort of thing anymore. I was given spirituality or taught it or shown it through big organized religion, and I didn't much like that. And I was a kid. It was above my head, heavy. It felt too wrathful and judgmental, and that didn't work for a bunch of different reasons, mainly because I didn't like authority. I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. I got excitement and thrill out of being a deviant. So religious authority, hell no. Get me away from this. So by the time I turned 18, I was ready to get a move on from having to go to church and the Bible, which is exactly what I did. And I dabbled in church. There was some of it that was a little, I don't know, nostalgic for me. The church moments where, oh, is this where God is? Yeah, in this big room that smells like incense with a guy with a big hat.
Yep.
I dabbled in it, and I wasn't desperate for it, but I wanted to believe there was something happening that was bigger than me. But
Right.
as I got further into addiction, there is no room, I don't think, for that. I just thought I knew better. I stopped looking for whatever is out there. And when I finally get back and I get clean, the idea in this 12-step program is, hey, it's God as you understand God. There's
Right.
not any specific one. So whatever's going to work for you there is good. And I thought, oh, I could probably get into that God. I mean, it's still a God of love, or if not just love, it's good teaching, it's principles, it's some foundational things that are not new that I follow. So I got a little bit bogged down as I got older and got clean with the whole idea that God is found in this building down the street, or in a church, or on your knees in a pew. I started thinking that's weird. Isn't God bigger than that? Why are we? I had all these hangups with
Yeah.
organized religion, and yet I still go out and I perform some of my Christian worship songs to religious audiences. It's not that I don't have a God or believe in God, but it's a different look than it was
Yeah.
the one I was taught. And
Yeah. Well, you make a good point. Like, where two or more are gathered, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have to be like, in a physical church. I believe that too. I mean, it's your own journey. I mean, you could have church in your own house,
Right. And I just ended up believing that if God is not love, then what is it? What is the value even? What is the value of this wrathful God, or this vengeful God, or this jealous God that's been pushed on me? Isn't God just love? And that's what I've come to believe, that, hey, if you're taking part in love outwardly and receiving it inwardly, I think you are experiencing God. And that's
definitely
a very simple, easy way for me, because it gets very complicated very quickly. And that's what people war over, and that's what people divide over, and that's what people put up walls over. I'm like, not into that thing.
Yeah.
So I still have a love for teaching that I was brought up with. I will still read my Bible, because there are great lessons. There's great stories. There's great poetry. There's great song. There's great metaphor. There's great parables. There's amazing things in there, but I do not read it in the same way that I was taught it, I guess.
Yeah, I echo that same thing too. That's a great point. I really like the way you said that. When you got through, writing the book, and you revisit your whole history, your upbringing, the whole ride with Hootie and the Blowfish, the recovery process, all that stuff. When you get to the end of the book and you look back on it, man, and the book is done and finished, what was the one thing throughout the book journey, that you feel like you learned about yourself? Obviously, like, you're going back in time and you're documenting the whole journey again.
That youth can be a moving target when you're looking back in history, and specifically in my own life, but in the band, where a lot of times the four of us lived the same thing. That was our career. We were like brothers. We lived in a van. We traveled together. We got famous together. We went through hard times together. But, looking back, I go, there are so many different versions of what happened on that journey. So in that sense, started it coming up when I started reading other versions of the Hootie and the Blowfish history that other people remembered. We were all together, but people were remembering them in different ways. I thought that's really interesting. Like, am I even right that I think I remember it the way I remember it? It's either convenience, or we want to remember only something we can understand. I don't know, but in the end, I realized, God, I'm glad I wrote this down. I'm glad I used the resources I did, which was my old calendars that told me where I was in the 80s and 90s. I saved them all. I had diaries that I went back to. I had my wife, Laura, who had experienced a lot of it. And I used the internet. I wanted to make sure, if anything, that the dates were correct in my story.
Yeah.
Because
that's nice. Now you can fact check everything too, which is kind of nice,
I I used the hell out of fact check because, yeah, I thought in 1995 we were in England in the summer. No, in
Right.
1995 we weren't in England in the summer because here's the dates, here's the concert footage that
Yep.
says you were in Australia. Oh, that's right. And I'm glad I was particular with really sorting those out. But there's still things that are my version of the truth. And there's others' versions of the truth. I think that's so. And the more I ask going forward, as now someone has written a book about us, Tim Summer, our old A&R rep from Atlantic
Mhm.
Records, wrote a great book called Only Want to Be With You. Darius has written a book as well. And it's like different versions of the truth. It's crazy. It's like baffling. And I don't even know who's right.
Yeah, pretty crazy too. Like you sit by and you watch. Like I mean, I mean, obviously his voice so rich, so beautiful, so comforting, and so soothing, man. But crazy just to have watched how Darius has become this huge crossover country star. I mean, his career is amazing.
It is so cool. I mean, to watch that happen to a friend, even though on some low level it hurt probably my ego more than anything.
Right, right.
Like, why isn't that us?
Right.
But to see a friend do something that's paper possible, not only a guy going from a rock band top of the country church, but a person of color doing that in
Yeah.
the year, in 2008, like that was very unlikely. Almost you couldn't script that, and to see that happen, and to see what joy he gained for himself and for others, we just couldn't help but be a part of it and support it, and want to be part of it in some way. We used to go when Laura and I married, and our kids were little. We'd go take all of them to go see Darius's country show. I wanted to see
Yeah.
because he would play some Hootie hits, and I wanted to watch what it looked like seeing "Hold My Hand" played in front of
Right.
15,000 people. And it was
Now you're on the other side of that. Yeah.
yeah, and that was really important for me to do and to say, I want to sit out here in the audience in the lawn seats
Yeah.
and just take it in. No one recognized me. I used to have hair, and I was
Yeah.
a bald guy and a bald cap on. I'm like, no one's gonna know me from the Man on the Moon. And it
Yeah.
was so cool out there to experience that. Like, what a
And,
gift.
and now correct me if I got any of this wrong in my research, but were you the primary writer of Hold My Hand?
I was, yeah, that was a song
And that was really, and I'm 51 years old, so I'm kind of going back in my own files here. When that song came out or whatever, that was the initial one that really got the world to fall in love with Hootie and the Blowfish. Such a great song, and just stays with you. What's the main ingredient that goes into writing a good song?
I don't know. I mean,
What's the most important part of it? The most important aspect of a great song?
me, that is a great. I'm not even sure I can answer that.
That is a great song,
and
I think it's a testament that it's a great song. Obviously, because you still hear it, it holds up over time, man. And I mean, anywhere you go, I mean, that song comes on, people still sing every word of it. I mean, people know it. It gets people moving. It evokes emotion in people. All the things you want out of a great piece of art, a great piece of music.
I don't think it's necessarily one thing that makes any song so great, but it's there's a few things that help to capture people's attention, and it's a good melody or an interesting topic or a hook, authentic and memorable. That's something that's new. Our producer, when he had us in the studio making Crack Rear View, and that was our first time working with a producer who had actually had legitimate hits out there as a producer. Yeah. He had produced John Mellencamp's biggest records of the 80s. And this guy knew what he was talking about, but he was describing it to me about, a good hit song. If we're talking about songs that'll capture people's attention, a good hit song is just a series of moments that continue to happen and the person's attention who's listening. So it's got to be some lyrics that are either interesting or riveting. It's got to be melodic things that you can remember. It's got to be quirky sounds that just kind of grab your attention and bring in change. It's got to keep flowing. It's got to rise. I mean, there's a lot of elements that really can make it. And he just said it's these series of sort of 5 to 7 second segments, one on top of another, that keep the listener there, so they don't want to leave the sound. And I thought that's a great great way
Yeah.
to look at that, you know, because
Yeah, that's
you
a
can
great
have
description.
deep lyrics, and that might not be enough to capture somebody. You can have a bunch of hooks that
Right.
may sound too hooky and bogus,
Yeah.
but a mix of those things I think works.
And obviously, music is subjective. A lot of times, like we take our own meaning from a song, but because that was really the first song that burst Hootie onto the scene, what was the story behind it? What were you writing about in that song? Like, was it biographical in any sense? What was the meaning behind, "Hold My Hand"?
Well, I really was frustrated, and I wrote that in as a 25-year-old guy who was frustrated with the world. I was hurt that I saw so much oppression and injustice and disparity and disturbance. You know, whether it was the government or people groups that were being oppressed, or friends that were down and out with drugs and addiction, and all this was just so heavy. And I thought, you know, we've got to. It was sort of a lift people up song. I wanted it to work. It was honestly a plea. Hold my hand. Let's do this together. Let's lift each other up. And
Yeah.
so it was a song that would represent a lot of my life too. That I've continued to sort of have that general feeling of we need to help each other out here. Nobody's going to do it on their own, and there's always going to be evil elements out there. So we need to work together. And it became, you know, for the public, I think, who heard it first on Letterman, in a national audience, they liked it was the timing of it. Grunge music was very big at the time. That
Yeah.
angsty, a little angry or depressed or repressed sort of thing. And I think music goes in these trends, and when one has been a trend for a few years, people are looking for relief from it. And I think we ended up being the relief from grunge. And
Yeah.
people said,
Great
"Hey,
point.
these
Yeah.
guys aren't that pissed off. They don't look like they're mad at their parents
Yeah.
that bad."
Yeah.
And so, but you know, and we loved grunge. It's not that we didn't love that freaking music. We listened to the hell out of it, but
Yeah.
we thought, and it still happened. And you know, while Cracked Review was going, there were still huge grunge bands making music in 94, 95, 96.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't kill it. People act like we killed it. No, we just were, I think, a relief for a lot of people from it.
And obviously, you being the drummer of the band, and I'm not trying to knock any of the other guys in the band, but the drummer does have quite the physical job back there. Over the years, as you play drums, how has your body held up? Hey, has physical pain become an issue? I know I've talked to a lot of drummers on here who have to change the trajectory of their drums or change the height of their stool or whatever. You know what I mean? You know, it is a physically demanding job. How has your body held up? And if you did have any nagging injuries, were any of those like masked by the drinking?
I've done pretty good against some odds, and part of it is a result of the lifetime I spent up until age 23 or 24 playing high level soccer.
Athletic. Yeah.
And I had this obsession that I loved sweating, and I loved tennis, basketball. There's a lot of sports that I was chasing even into my 30s and 40s, and that always kept me on the front foot. I'm a little blessed with my metabolism. I'm tall but a little narrow, so I've never had to deal with weight issues for the most part. But you know, I abused my body. That was probably the worst thing I did in my worst drunken years. I was not treating my body, especially my hands, as if they were my paycheck. I was getting in fights. I was punching walls. I was just not doing a great job and sort of respecting the thing that was not just for my paycheck, but a lot of people around me in my band and our crew who, you know, we toured for a living. That's how we made our living after the record sales. So you know, in the end, I've been blessed with that desire to chase. I'm 60 now. We just did 46 shows this summer. I felt brilliant. I worked out every day that we were playing a show in the morning, and we played the entire 2-hour set at night. And I never felt better. Healthy diet, good exercise, and you know, that's where I'm at. It's a little clearer now as an older man that there's only two elements I really do need to worry about, and that's diet and exercise.
Right.
You know, and I'm doing a much better job now, and as a result, I didn't have to, you know, worry about failing. I have a shoulder thing I was dealing with, but I made sure to get it worked on before the tour. I got a back thing that I'm dealing with. I made sure not to do anything stupid on tour. You know, you just gotta be careful, I guess.
And when you're out there touring now, and again, I'm not a musician, but I know being 51 years old, I go to my day job, I come home at night, you really start to become, a little more of a homebody. You like your creature comforts, you know what I mean? You kind of like what's familiar to you. Do you still like the kind of, nomadic existence that goes with touring? Do you still enjoy being out there on the road?
I do. It's harder though, because we don't tour. You get used to that nomadic life when it is your whole life. So
Right.
from the early '90s and into our stardom and putting out albums and albums, you just toured for 10 or 15 years, and that became your inner tempo. And when I got clean and then divorced and remarried, and suddenly found myself with not only my two kids from my first marriage, but three more from my second wife, you realize that's not the pace I'm going to be able to keep up. And I want to be here for those kids and for my wife. And so we slowed down tremendously, as did the nomadic lifestyle. We took almost a 10-year dormancy where we only did 3 or 4 shows a year, and it was only in the state of South Carolina to raise money for the HOOTIE and the Blowfish Foundation. And so for 10 years, we didn't sell tickets. I wasn't jet setting anywhere. I was resting and recovering from a pretty hard 15 to 20-year run. And as a result, when we toured in 2019 and did 50 amphitheaters across America and did so well for so many fans, I was rested. I was like, oh, hell yeah, bring me this thing. And then we had another rest after that tour. COVID, of course, stole a couple of years where we all sat on our asses at home. But when 2024 tour came around and we were ready to do it again, 46 more amphitheaters, I was like, I'm rested. I feel good. I'm ready for this thing. So that lifestyle, I don't have to, I'm not running from anything. I'll say that. I think in the past, I was to some degree running from a lot of troubles in my mind and in places that I was leaving a bad path of carnage, unfortunately, as well. And now I don't have that. I'm in a healthy relationship and I'm healthy minded, I think, and enough to say, yeah, I don't really need much. I like my home life. Our kids are grown and grown up, and give me a hot cup of coffee, give me the chance to watch my sports teams and be active and love my wife, and that's healthy for me. And I like that.
Yeah. Now, we talked about Hold My Hand. I'm thinking about Only Want to Be With You, Time, Let Her Cry. Just amazing songs on there. Are you able to put a finger on, you hit on how that album kind of seamlessly kind of fit in there while grunge was going on or whatever? But 21 million freaking albums, are you able to kind of process that and in your own mind, like say, what was it, looking back in retrospect, why do you think Cracked Rear View just really resonated with people, to the tune of that many albums? I mean, people would kill to have, a career where they sold that many albums, and you guys do it on like one album, and a debut album nonetheless too. Why do you think that album resonated with so many people? I mean, I know why it resonated with me, but a lot of it is just that, it was going against the type of all the angst and the angry music that was out there. It was comforting, a lot like a warm blanket or something comfortable and familiar. Is that your view on it? Why you think it resonated with people?
I mean, I think timing, yeah, but I'll go to my grave not knowing how the hell this is happening. I'll go to my grave like, I don't freaking know. I just don't. I wish it was something I could understand. We were blessed that we had gotten to write songs and rehearse them and test them in front of people for 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And that gave us a real clear idea. If we can get a record deal and get in and produce a good sounding record, that there's songs that a lot of our fans, if not all of our fans at that time, were great songs. They told us by showing up back at the bars, paying $5 to get in to see us in 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94. If we can get these out to people, we think they will work. Now, that only explains that it makes sense that we had a hit record. We had the timing and the luck of an engine called Atlantic Records. If they're a big team and they got us on radio and Letterman, of course. But the weirder thing is how it's transpired that we went from selling CDs. We went eventually CDs became no more, as did record stores.
Yep.
Somehow all those fans needed that music enough that they started downloading it for 99 cents or whatever the album cost. And when downloading ended, they started streaming it. It's continued on, and that's testament to something. The thing I'll die not knowing.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I also kind of think too, and again, this is not to not to be taken as I'm impugning your abilities as musicians, but there was something behind it where there was a simplicity to it all too. You know what I mean? It wasn't like there was a lot of like noodling and a lot of showing off about, you know, how proficient you guys are as music. There was really a familiarity and a simplicity to the songs. You know what I mean? Like the structure of them was just kind of like, you know, it felt like music that everybody could relate to, you know, like, look, like these guys aren't necessarily reinventing the wheel, but this feels very comfortable and very familiar when you put this album on.
Well, maybe that's the reason. Maybe you just nailed the reason. It's familiar, it's comfortable, it's simple, it's relaxing, and a lot of people strive for when they put music on. You know, some people just want to be able to chill. Other people want amazing musicianship and acrobatics on noodling and all that stuff. I do. I love music like that too. Sometimes I don't want to hear. Yeah, sometimes I don't want to hear lyrics. I listen to Jazz Channel and just zone out with that. Sometimes I listen to country music for completely different reasons. So I think there just was a large group of people that, for whatever reason, really teamed. It became this like explosion that happened in 1995.
Yeah, it was like a groundswell. You guys were everywhere in 1994. Everywhere.
We were.
I mean,
it was amazing. So yeah, man, happy to have lived it. It's been. I love talking about it. I appreciate you reaching out for the conversation, because I'll never probably tire of talking about something that's changed me and Darius and Mark's lives and Dean's lives, because without Cracker Review, we'd be in a different place.
Now, in all your years in the business, in touring, as you say, and being all around the world or wherever, you've probably obviously had the chance to share the stage or share festivals or share tours and stuff with other people. You know what I mean? You've accomplished some great things, but have you had a chance to rub elbows with, and I don't want to say fanboy out, but have there been people that you've been around where you're like, wow, I can't believe I just met him?
Yeah, I mean, one of the moments early on that always strikes me is that we got to play Frank Sinatra's 80th birthday party. Yeah. And it was a televised event, I think, but suddenly it wasn't Hootie and the Blowfish just out on tour with 10 or 20,000 fans a night. We were with people who were in the industry that had been our idols, from Bruce Springsteen to Ray Charles, to like these big, serious movers and shakers, not just other rock stars that happened to get big in 1995. We were around some people that were historically the biggest in the industry, and I was like, "What are we doing? What is Hootie and the Blowfish doing here?" You know, frankly, I think we're a little out of place, but it was tremendous, just feeling, you know. And you don't stay up there all the time. You come back down, you ride waves, you get lucky meeting some people along the way. But that was a moment at his 80th birthday of like, I can't believe we were just playing bars 2 years ago, you know.
Yeah,
what did
and
we
here we are with Frank Sinatra.
This?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And so I would be remiss in asking, and I would want to hear about it in the comments section if I didn't ask. But going forward, though, what is the plan as we move ahead into the future with Hootie and the Blowfish? Will there ever be new music? Will you guys continue to tour? Will you guys be doing, you know, select dates? Will it be an every summer thing? Like, have you guys sat around and collectively talked about what the future holds for Hootie and the Blowfish?
No, it's as weird and scary as it might seem. We didn't do it in 2008. We took an indefinite dormancy that we didn't know if it would last 6 months. We didn't know if Darius's country project that he was putting out was going to last a week or a year or 10. So we didn't do it in 2008. It lasted almost 10 years. In 2019, when we finished that tour, we said, hey, maybe this is worthy of doing again in 5 years. We just sort of put that out there as a thought, because a nostalgia band, no matter how many records they've sold, can't just go out and tour every summer. So we said, maybe we'll do it in 5 years. And sure enough, when 2023 rolled around, we started talking about 2024, sort of the 30th anniversary of Cracked Review's release, and it worked out great. Fans came out in enormous numbers again this year. We put 32,000 people in Fenway Park. Like, what the hell? You know, and mostly on an average night, we'd put 15,000 people in an amphitheater. And so we have to sort of just balance, hey, what's Darius's trajectory? Is he putting out a new album? Does he want to dedicate more time to that? What do I want to do as a person? My kids are a little grown and there's not that home responsibility for them anymore. What do you want to do? We've got, you know, sort of check ourselves in 6 months and a year and see what's happening, what the vibe is. I'd love to go out and do another amphitheater tour. I'm sure everybody in the band would love to go do that because
yes,
it's the most awesome thing ever to spend a summer driving across the country in buses with 10 trucks and a bunch of buses and your musical friends. And it's the greatest job in the world in that sense. But, you know, I'm not sure. We're letting it hang out there in the wind for a minute. We'll see which way it blows.
And now, would you say never to a new Hootie and the Blowfish album, or will it always just be going out and playing the material that's already there?
Well, we're just going to press AI, sound like Hootie and the Blowfish, and we'll see what pops out of the freaking speakers. It'll probably be better than us. No, I don't know. No, I'd do another project. Have to be the right thing. We've got a anniversary coming up, like it would be the 30th anniversary of our second album, Fairweather Johnson.
Fairweather Johnson, yeah,
coming in 2026. So we may try and do some sort of re-release with that and dig some songs out of the vault that didn't make the record. That'd be a fun project to put out there. But yeah, maybe some new music. We'll see.
Now, what's the impetus right now, like with your solo stuff? You just released new music solo?
Yeah, I'm putting a Christmas album out that just dropped. It's a 5-song EP, and I've been making solo music since 2012. I really enjoy the outlet. I enjoy my own thing, working with different musicians and producers. So I've put out a series of contemporary Christian EPs back in 2012, 14, and 15. I re-released a project from 2008 that was more of a, I guess, alternative album with Francis Dunnery, this British guy. I re-released that last year, and this Christmas EP is just another way to express myself and go out and promote some music and learn how to be a lead vocalist. So I'm enjoying it. We'll probably keep putting out music in the coming years too.
And now that you're the lead vocalist, when you're sitting down to write these songs, what kind of creative process do you take individually? Like, are you somebody that gets ideas? I hear a lot of guys come on here and they say they get ideas in the car or at their day job, or, you get creative people who sequester themselves into a room and make themselves write. Like for you, what's the process like? Are you get inspiration throughout the day?
I'm a loner. I write when the well is running. I dig into that creative well. Whenever it gives me music, I capture it. On the piano mostly at home and on the acoustic guitar as well. And I sort of look ahead on the schedule and decide, do I want to put in the time and effort and money into a project, and when would it come out? So I'm always flirting with ideas, but when I'm in a project, I usually have new music popping out of me after I release the project. So I'm sure at the beginning of next year, I'll be thinking about something new. I've got plenty of songs and material that I've been writing through the past few years and COVID. Be overjoyed to be able to put out a new album again, and I'm sure I will.
I'm glad you're doing so good, Jim, man. And the book is just is certainly going to reach and touch a lot of people. I think people that are struggling, man, are really going to glean a lot of wisdom out of it. And I think it's going to speak to a lot of people, especially seeing somebody that reached the peaks that you have. I mean, it just goes to show that, nobody is immune, to this happening to them. You know what I mean? So I think that vulnerability is going to speak to like a lot of people that are going through it, man. And I really enjoyed it. I'm also glad that you did an audio version and narrated it yourself. I can't say enough how important it is for people to tell their story in audiobook version form and tell it themselves. No one tells your story like you do. A hired narrator just doesn't cut it for me.
I was so lazy. I was going to bail out and let somebody else read it. My wife, Laura, pleaded.
Kudos
She
to you.
said,
I'm
you got to
glad you
do
did
it.
it, man. I'm glad you did it, man. And it's such a great book, man. And you know, I can honestly say, as a long time, lifelong fan, man, thank you so much for all the great music and the great songs, man. And it's so great to see you doing so well, man. And you know, I'm glad you're on the road, you know, to recovery, man. And you've got a handle on things, man. And things are going so well for you, man.
I appreciate the time to talk about the book and the journey, and hope everybody
Oh,
out there
man.
will pick up a copy, man. Let's stay in touch. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
thanks
Stay in
for
touch. I
reaching
would love
out.
to. Yeah, I'd love to have another great conversation with you. Definitely stay in touch, man. And I really enjoyed this a lot, man. I was looking forward to it all day, man. And I'm glad we got a chance to do this. And thank you so much for doing it, man.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Great talking to you, Soni. Appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much, man. God bless, brother.
All right, see you on the flip side.
You got it, my friend. Thank you. There he goes, folks. The legendary Jim Soni Sonefeld, the drummer for 21 times platinum, and that's just on Cracked Rear View. 21 times platinum. For God's sakes, can you wrap your head around your debut album coming out and selling 21 million? The eighth best-selling album in United States history. That is crazy, man. Even Pops up there, Diamond Dave, my Pops, is even eating his heart out, man. Even the mighty Van Halen didn't do that. And by the way, man, being as that I am the offspring of rock royalty, let me give myself a look after an amazing conversation just to make sure that it's all still in order. And it is. And of course, folks, you know how I make that happen. Let me get my little promo in right now. Get it, love it, use it. And as I always say, you won't look this damn good because that's impossible. I've got the rock star genes, but you could probably look pretty good. Get yourself some of this, get it in your life, man. And maybe, just maybe, you can get the quaff like Roth. Probably not, though. But as I always say, don't hate, congratulate, man. You're looking at a guy blessed with rock star genes. So, and we will prove very soon. My attorneys have assured me that we will prove that I am indeed the son of glam, the front man for the band, adored by millions of fans, the peanut butter to your jam. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Wop, Bop, Loo, Bop, Wop, bam, bam, shazam, hot damn. Oh, that was a good interview. That felt so damn good. I was giddy all day, as I said earlier, just geeked up, getting ready to talk to the great Jim Soni Sonefeld, the man behind the drum kit for the great, and I do mean great, a multi-platinum many times over, Hootie and the Blowfish. If you were alive in the 90s, circa 1994 onward, you could not escape the power and the potency of the great Hootie and the Blowfish. They were everywhere. That first album, songs like Hold My Hand, Time, Let Her Cry, Only Want to Be With You. I mean, come on, man. Every time you turned on MTV, there was Hootie and the Blowfish, man. And for good reason, man. The songs, as I said, amazing, catchy, simplistic, just like a warm, comforting blanket, man. You can still put on their debut album, Cracked Rear View, and all their albums throughout their discography and still get that same warm, nostalgic feeling. And they're still out there doing it, folks. They just did a wildly successful arenas or outdoor amphitheater tour this summer, which regrettably I did not get to. And it was right in my backyard here in Syracuse, New York. But my job got in the way and couldn't do it. But wanted to. We'll get to see them again the next time around, man. One of the great bands, man. And surviving in the midst of putting out their debut album in 94, surviving in the midst, right in the thick of when grunge was huge and all the music was heavy and dark and angst-filled. And there was Hootie and the Blowfish, threaded right in there, man, just making us feel good, tapping our feet, bebopping along, man. Feeling fucking great, man. One of the great bands to ever do it, man. And a great drummer. Now, as you said, doing some amazing solo work, some contemporary Christian music. Great drummer, man, and a truly great songwriter. Lest us not forget when we first heard Hootie and the Blowfish and we heard Hold My Hand. I'm not going to do it, but written by the great Jim Soni Sonefeld. Can't thank him enough for doing that, man. Being on here, man. A huge honor, man. And I implore people to go out and get his memoir. And he documents it all. meeting the other guys in Hootie and the Blowfish, University of South Carolina, his upbringing, the origins of the band, starting out, getting famous. Of course, obviously, he spoke about the pitfalls, the alcoholism and addiction, and the whole situation coming full circle and coming out of the other end of that. The book is called Swimming with the Blowfish, Hootie, Healing, and One Hell of a Ride, a story of redemption. And it truly is, man, truly a book that will really move you. Because of problems with my peepers, have the audio version, which thankfully, as I said, is read by Jim. So it's great to hear him tell his story, man. A book that is impactful and I think will really, truly speak to people who are going through trouble, obviously, with addiction, mental health issues, and certainly a high level of vulnerability in there, too, because obviously Jim is going through this stuff at the heights of ridiculous fame, proving that nobody is invincible, nobody is immune to the pitfalls and the dangers of addiction. It can creep into anybody's life, man. Even somebody at the dizzying heights of fame, as Jim was. So I implore you, go out, check out the book, Swimming with the Blowfish, Hootie, Healing, and One Hell of a Ride, a story of redemption. And also go to JimSonefeld.com to check out anything that Jim is doing as far as shows and his solo work. He didn't plug that on here, but I will plug it for him, man. JimSonefeld.com. That's SONEFELD.com. And you can find out everything that Jim's up to. And there's links to getting the book. You can order the book through the website, man. Lots of good stuff to sink your teeth into. Jim, one of the true good guys out there, man. Great family man, great drummer, great songwriter, great ambassador for addiction recovery because of this book. So so happy to see Jim and so happy to see him thriving and doing well and to have seemingly come out of the other side of a very dark phase in his life, man. And fingers crossed, never say never. Maybe we get some new Hootie and the Blowfish music, but we can still celebrate the amazing discography that's out there. And the boys are still getting out there doing their thing out in the live venues. So catch a Hootie and the Blowfish show, man, and go back and relive the 90s. Personally, I'd like to go back there and stay there, even the 80s. So I will always throw on Hootie and the Blowfish, even as a diehard rock and metal fan. Hootie and the Blowfish always in my regular rotation, man, just because of the amazing high level of songwriting, the catchiness, the whole vibe, man. And of course, the lead singer, Darius Rucker, if you're into country music, has gone on to an amazing crossover country career. And I mean, come on, who doesn't love Darius Rucker's voice, man? Just smooth, silky, rich voice. Just an amazing bunch of guys, man, who, as you heard, the story's pretty unlikely. Guys that really met at college and never thought that they were going to be at those dizzying heights of fame. You know, it could happen to you, kids. Jamming in college, man, going out to the bars, as Jim said, for some beer and some chicken wings and getting paid and however and whenever you can. And suddenly, man, next thing you know, you're selling 21 million albums. Now, that formula won't work for everybody, man, but it is possible. So truly, all things are possible, man. Just I can't say enough how much I enjoyed that in-depth conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. I don't want to ramble for too long here, man. Make sure to like and follow PodScum on Facebook. And also make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay tapped in. This is where the coolest conversations happen. The cool kids come to chop it up here with your boy, Rexx Ruger. And of course, my silent partner, if you couldn't tell by them big-ass chompers, the Freddie Mercury puppet. Make sure to stay tapped in, man. We love you here at PodScum, man. Come back for the amazing conversations. That I can always guarantee you. And we just had one right there with Jim Sonefeld. So I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart. An amazing episode, man. An amazing dude. Go do your musical homework. Go back and relive and re-listen to the Hootie and the Blowfish discography. Go to JimSonefeld.com and check out everything he's doing, his solo work, man. Support our musical artists out there. As I always say, they're giving themselves a piece of their heart and their soul, man. We got to lift them up, man. We got to go out, get out to live shows. We got to buy merch. We got to support them, man, or else you know, this thing that keeps us sane, that keeps us relaxed, this music, this art that the rest of us who aren't artistic drink in and enrich our lives with, it all goes away, man. So these people are out there making a living, they're grinding just like the rest of us out there doing our 9 to 5. We want to get paid for it. These guys do too, man. And the difference is they're giving us a piece of themselves. And so it's not an easy time in the business right now. It probably never really has been. So go out, support your favorite musical artist, man. And I've said my piece. That makes me feel so much better. And I will also say, as I always do when I end these things, remember to take it easy and keep it sleazy.